Hey, friend, welcome back to the Live Off Rent Show. We bring in real estate investors, other financial experts to help you build passive income, create your dream lifestyle, reach financial independence, all that good stuff that we all want to do as investors. As always, I'm your host, Brian Davis, co-founder of Spark Rental, and I'm on this journey with you guys. I am in the trenches investing every month with you and with our investment club members. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. Dr. Jen Salisbury is a former U.S. Navy nuclear propulsion engineer. She has a doctorate in education in addition to her engineering background because her passion is teaching. And through her podcast and her coaching program called My Life as a Landlord, she has a personal mission to create communities by teaching about housing. So, Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Brian. This is great.
Absolutely. So, you and I have spoken a few times now. I think you had me on your podcast and we've talked about passive versus active real estate investing. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about how you got into real estate in the first place, especially given that you have a totally separate background in the
Right.
Navy as an engineer, having a doctorate in education. So what brought you to real estate?
Well, I ran into this guy named Michael, and he happened to be a general contractor, and he was about as entrepreneurial as you can think of. And I was the opposite end of the spectrum in the military. That's not a 9 to 5; it's more like a 6 to 6 to 6 kind of a. It doesn't end when you're in the military. And so when I got with Michael and started understanding a little bit more about how cash flow works, and he really got me out of the I want to say employee mindset, the 9 to 5 job mindset, and realize, wait, hey, we're pretty smart people. We can do this. And if I help him, then I can help streamline his contractor business. And here we are, 18 years later. I'm basically a construction manager. Just finished a big build after the last 3 years in South Maui on a project called Paradise Ridge, and survived the that that whole development was 28 years in the making. I mean, we took some licks and all of that, and of course, then the fires happened literally a month after we finished Paradise Ridge. So that's how I got started. Is I met my husband and really got into what's this all about, and realized that there's a human side of it in the way of excuse me, in the way of tenants and property management. And there's so many ways to communicate with everybody in business in general. But when it comes to rental housing, that you've got to be able to have awkward conversations. So that's how it all started. Yeah.
Well, let's dig in there for a second because I
Okay.
I always found property management to be my least favorite thing about owning rental properties. Maybe my second least most favorite thing. I really hated working with contractors. Of course, you're married to one, so I can't talk too much smack.
Okay.
But that's a pain point for a lot of investors, working with contractors and working with tenants and trying to, it can feel like herding cats in a lot of cases, with both managing contractors and managing tenants. So I'm curious to hear some of your tips for landlords of all
Hmm.
sizes, in
Right.
how to manage either
Right.
contractors or tenants.
Well, and we have businesses, we have contracting businesses on both sides of the border. We're both in the U.S. and Canada, and that's exactly why my podcast was so. All our listeners were so enamored with you, Brian, is because you're international as well. And so, if I had some tips to tell your listeners when you are working with contractors or tenants or handyman or your property managers, whoever you're dealing with, you must speak in facts. If you instantly go to drama, if you go, oh, this happened and this happened, and then my kid was late for school and this happened, and now we've got this bill and that, and it just goes on and on and on. Just go, no, this is what happened. This is what we agreed to. You need to either fix it, stop it, move out, or whatever it is. But if you can kind of filter through the the emotion, which I mean, we all go to there. We all get mad, right? We all get upset. If you can filter through the emotion and speak in facts and say, this was reported this time, this was reported this time, I saw this on camera, you didn't pay on time, you speak in facts of what you know and say, okay, based on this, all these actions, here are your options. And it's pretty simple. And it's like either one, I don't care, option one, option two, you choose. I don't care which option you choose. There it is. So awkward conversations is where it's at. And if you can speak in facts, you've conquered those awkward conversations. Pretty. It sounds really simple to say, but it's not.
Well, right. One of those things that's you can say it in a single sentence. It's simple but not easy, right? Like the
Right.
concept is simple, but the practice is really hard. And yeah, I mean, I remember that I'm no longer a landlord. I got rid of my rental properties and now I invest passively. But I remember that frustration, when trying to get all these people to do what they said that they would do, whether that's tenants paying rent or not bringing in, their deadbeat boyfriend or their all their
Mm-hmm.
dogs and whatever, or getting contractors to stay in budget and
Mm-hmm.
on time, on schedule, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, to use the higher quality materials that they said they were going to use, but maybe they are not actually using,
Mm-hmm.
or property managers getting them to actually, inspect the property every 6 months, or whatever it is that they are supposed to be doing but not actually doing. It's
Right.
so hard to maintain your equanimity through that and not let your frustration get the better of you. So yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from there, keeping it to the facts. And, Denny and I, we used to talk about property management all the time because our focus used to be exclusively on rental investing. And, one of the things that we talked about was just running it like almost like a robotic business where, you're you're like almost like a corporation where it's just the facts. These are the options. I don't. Your stories are not of interest to me. You either need to pay the rent or move out, right? Like, kind of like a mortgage lender would. That sounds colder than I meant it to sound, but it's hard.
It, but it is hard, and the reality is that things do happen. Life does happen, and so there is also a human side to that. And so you can almost go to the other extreme and saying, okay, it's everything is like you say robotic, but it also goes, you know what, this person just lost. I had a tenant one time. Unfortunately, both of his parents were killed in a
Oh
in a
wow.
criminal activity. And do you think he was traumatized? Of course he was. And so we went to him immediately and said, what do you need from us? What do you need? Do you need time? Do you need, a month? Like, what do you need? And because he wasn't able to work. I mean, there is a human aspect to this. And especially when you realize that the tenants are part of the asset, they're part of the asset. They're the reason why that asset is valued the way it is because of the rents they're paying and the non-mischief, if you will. They're adhering to rules and all of those things. There is a human side. So being completely robotic is not always the best answer. It works in a lot of times when you're getting a lot of drama where I just say, you know what, unfortunately, that's not a safety issue. If you have an issue, call the police, but that's not a safety issue that the landlord's going to engage in. And I just leave it at that. And saying those words, even going, wow, some of your listeners need to hear these words and saying, you know what, you don't have to take on all the drama that the tenants bring on. You have permission to not take on all their drama. You only take on what's applicable to you as the landlord.
Yeah, and as a landlord who manages your own properties, you know who
Yeah.
your good tenants are, your reliable tenants are,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the people who have an excuse every month, right? So
Yep.
when you have a good tenant and something tragic happens to them,
Yep.
then yeah, you're going to you're going to cut them a break, right? Because you know that they are a fundamentally reliable, responsible person, as opposed to that person who always has an excuse for you every month. So, Jen, I want to hear about how you scaled your investments, how you got started,
Mm-hmm.
and then how things changed for you from those first maybe awkward properties that all of us seem to wander into, to scaling to a more efficient investing machine.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that there were certain points in our journey that my mind was blown, and I'll tell you exactly where they were. So the first one was my husband had built a house. This was in Canada during the recession. We had retreated to Canada. We had left Hawaii. Hawaii's economy was absolutely as low as anybody's ever seen it because there were no tourists coming. There was no economy, no income, just nothing. And so we had retreated to Canada to recover. The Canadian recession was nowhere on the scale of the US recession at that time. And so he was building a house. We would move into it. He would build out either the basement or if there was a suite underneath, he would build that out and then we would sell it. But we would sell it with the subject that we would move into the next one. And so we moved a lot out of necessity. We didn't have a whole lot of money at all. And we got to the point where we did this, I think, 4 or 5 times. and we couldn't sell it. The economy up in Canada didn't allow us to sell it. And it sat for 4 or 5 months, and we went, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We don't have any cash flow going on. And so he said, why don't we move into the basement and we'll rent upstairs and find a family that wants to rent. And I said, okay, so that changed the game a bit for the first time, because we had been fix and flipping and moving in and, doing all that differently. So the business model changed. So we found this amazing family that we still know who had a dog, and they were both professionals, great kids, the whole nine. And I went, Mike, that was it. I said, professional families that have pets have nowhere to go. I said, that's the wrinkle. So what he did was, instead of moving, we leveraged with the lease, we leveraged it and bought another lot, built another house with 2 suites in it. And I remember when we got to lock up, so the roof was on, the windows on, Rick, we could actually lock the house up. We went to the local credit union who was financing us, and we got a mortgage on the new house. We had a mortgage on the house that we were living in with the tenants, and then we got a second mortgage. And I remember getting that mortgage on the second house, and my mind, like, I couldn't fathom it. I went, what did we just do? And he said, we just changed the game, is what we did. We changed it again. So then we ended up renting it top and bottom again. So now we had 3 rentals. So we took the equity on that one and did it again. And at this point, we were starting to realize that maybe new construction wasn't the best. The lots were getting more expensive. Building permit times were getting longer, more expensive. And so we started looking at existing homes that we could then renovate and rent with multiple suites in it, ideally 2 or 3, but we found a 4-plex. And so at one point in Canada, we kept doing this. We ended up with, I think, 9 properties, 31 doors total. And then we realized, there's a lot of moving parts here. And then we did a real hard scrub. Brian, you'll appreciate this because you're a numbers guy. We did a real hard scrub on what properties were making the most money, what were the most effort, just the most maintenance. Obviously the ones that we had just built were the least maintenance. But then we went, you know what? Anything that's less than 3 units, any of our 2-unit ones, we're going to sell. And so that's what we ended up doing, is we ended up selling the 2-unit ones. And then we went, even the 3-unit ones don't cash flow as much as we would like. And so then we ended up with the 4-plexes, and then we bought a larger commercial property as well. We bought an apartment building, and I still maintain that from Maui. We run that remotely in British Columbia, with a staff on site there. And when we shifted back from Canada to Hawaii in 2015, there was a big sit down, because by then I had great systems. We had a cleaner, a maintenance guy. We had an emergency repair person. I had a bit of a manager who was great. And Mike looked at all of us in the eye and he said, you all need to figure out how to operate without her. And he was pointing at me. She can't physically be here. So you guys need to figure this out, how we're going to do this. And it was all things like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get the mail? How we're going to pay the bills? How we're going to do it? So everything got either scanned and emailed to me. I could write a check and then mail it from here, but there's like Venmo, the equivalent of Venmo in Canada. So I could pay electronically there, or I could call in a credit card. I mean, that's how we've done it. I mean, during COVID, I didn't go back to Canada for 3 years, and wow, we maintained all these properties. And yes, personnel changes, life happens. And we always say family comes first. If people need to depart because of family, that's the way it is. And we've got just a great team that isn't always going to be the same people, but that's how we scaled. And we've done something similar on Maui, not the same story, but it started with one, and we took a really hard look at what was happening and what wasn't happening and pivoted. That's how we did it.
Well, there's so much there that you said that I want to highlight and that resonated with me. So first of all, the house hacking, right? I mean, I'm a huge fan of house hacking. When I bought my first home, many years ago, I rented out one of the rooms to a housemate, and her rent covered 3/4 of my mortgage. my business partner Denny, she's done everything from renting out storage space and garage space in her home to hosting a foreign exchange student, and the monthly stipend from that covered almost her entire mortgage payment. So there's so many ways to get creative with house hacking, and towards, to your point of what you guys did, building out an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, to these properties to rent out. You can end up with most of your mortgage or even all of your mortgage covered that way, right? Which frees up more money for investing and for building new properties or buying properties and renovating. So I love that. And I love what you said about taking a close look at your portfolio and figuring out, all right, what are the cash cows and what is just costing me a lot of time every month without a lot of money. One of the ways that some real estate investors, including myself, used to look at active real estate investing was going through an acquisition phase where you're just buying as many cash flowing properties as you can. And then as they start appreciating and as you start paying down the mortgages and getting equity in them, you can then take that close look at them and say, all right, I'm going to sell half of these and take all the proceeds to pay off the mortgages on the other half so that I have half as many properties and half as much work in managing them, but just as much money, if not more, cash flow from them, as a way to kind of transition into true streams of passive income that you could actually live on, right? And actually have financial independence with. So one of the things that I want to hear more about is how you made that transition from, the smaller multifamilies, the 2, 3, 4 unit properties up to buying a full-size apartment building, because that's an intimidating transition for a lot of active investors.
I remember the day after we closed on the building. So it was a 12-unit apartment building that we still own. I remember when we closed on it and waking up the next day, and the realtor had handed us this ball, literally a ball of keys. And I remember waking up going, oh my God, what have we done? What have we done? So when we bought the building, there were 5 empty units. 3 of them were under renovation. One of the tenants was in jail, and the seller was removing the contents of that unit, putting them into storage. So that was not part of the transaction. And then there was 1 unit that was ready for rent that they had actually already started advertising. And I said, stop advertising. I don't want your tenant in there. I want my tenant in there.
Yep.
And we immediately went to renovating all 5 of those units. So that was the first thing that we wanted to do, is we wanted to reposition those units. At the time we bought it, it was a Class C building. It was kind of known as a junky building, but it was small enough that Mike and I could leverage our way into. And so we did. And him being a contractor, we figured out how were we going to actually do this, and financially even. We worked on this, and Mike's just walking in the room here. We're recording. Michael, we're recording, just so you know.
Hi, Michael.
Sorry, yeah, I know. he's turning around now because he knows we're recording, but that's okay. So what we did was we renovated 3 of the units. Sorry, we renovated 5 of the units, but the one that was ready to go, we put our paint on the walls because we use only one color of paint. It's called Slinky, and that's a strategy that many real estate investors have, where they come in and all of the paint is exactly the same. So it's not a discussion of what paint goes where. And so we painted the suites one color and then the bathrooms one color. In the event we're out of the bathroom paint, we'll paint it the Slinky color either. So we repainted, we put in some new flooring, we upgraded the appliances, I think, and did a few other things, but it was not a major reno. We actually turned it pretty quickly and rented it very quickly, which was great because we had just bought the building and then needed to start recouping some cash flow. Then we moved on to the other 4 units, and it was, we did not break drywall. That was the one condition on all of this, is that I said, we're not actually upgrading electrical or plumbing. That's not required. Nobody required it. It's up to code. We just need to take out the 1980s cabinets in it and the Formica countertops. And so we put a new set of Salisbury cabinets in it, which, we have our systems, and that was the same cabinet set. We just needed the layout, and then our cabinet makers would make them. We upgraded the doors, new flooring, new paint. If the bathtub wasn't a tile surround, then we would tile the bathroom, that kind of thing. And so you can see it was this cascade of renovations and then concurrent rentals that over a year, it was about 1 unit renovated per month. So at the end of the year that we had purchased we bought it in January of 2015. And at the end of 2015, all 12 units, including the common area and the laundry, had been renovated. And then at the end of that, we had done a big refinance with our lender and put a long-term mortgage in place. And here we are. One of the other strategies we've done is because now we've owned this building for almost 10 years, when we get to the 5-year point, we will talk to the lender based on interest rates, based on their lending requirements. And we won't take any equity out. We'll just say, okay, go make the amortization timing from 25 years back out to 30 years. And what that does is it brings our payment down. And so their cash flow instantly goes up, and we've done nothing. We've taken no equity out. So that's the other strategy that we use. Instead of doing a pay down. In Canada, there's no 1031 exchanges to defer capital gains. You pay no matter what if you sell it. And so sometimes there's no advantage to selling. So that was another strategy we did, was we just refinanced and we kick out the amortization to 30 years again and restart over.
Yeah. No, that all makes sense. I love the standardizing. That's a great tip for investors, especially newer investors. Standardizing, the same paint, the same cabinets, the same countertops, everything is the same across all your units. You don't have to second guess anything or search around the basement for the different paint colors, right? I mean, you know exactly what's going in there. And any contractors you work with, they know what's going in there. They have a standard operating procedure. I love that. And that ties back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago about systematizing your business so that it can run without you. You have a standard system in place, and that's all there is to it. And I love the efficiencies that you were talking about of multifamily, where you have more units under one roof. There are some efficiencies there, right? It's easier to manage those buildings, at least on a per unit basis. So I want to be cognizant of your time here, but I want to hear some of your best tips for people who are either getting into rental investing, or maybe they've done a few units but want to scale up. So other than marrying your contractor, what are some of the most effective tips that you've seen work for novice and intermediate real estate investors?
Put a classified ad in the local newspaper looking for houses to buy. We have had such great success, and I have no problem saying it because I'm not competing with anyone. And if someone wants to put a classified ad in their local newspaper or their flyer or wherever they live, wanted to buy, give us a call. People will call. And guess what? It's not like a realtor's open house when there's a flood of people going there. The seller is calling you saying, this is what I have, this is what I want to do. And there's a lot of people exiting the homeowners market who want to sell, but don't necessarily know what to do. And so it's a very non-intrusive way for them to have that conversation. And sometimes it's sobering for them. They've not called a realtor. And so they might, they'll call us and say, hey, I have this, this, and this. Is this something that you want to look at? And we always consider everything. And that's another tip, is always look at everything, because even if it isn't for you, it might be for one of the real estate investors in your group that you can wholesale it to. So we always use a classified ad. The other thing that we do is we talk to our neighbors. We talk to all our neighbors and say, hey, we're looking for this. We're looking for a different property. We're looking for a couple of things. If you guys hear of anything at all, please keep us in mind. And then when they do, the first thing I do is I thank them for remembering that I had asked them for the opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity. That's what we say.
I love that. Well, it's so low tech. Everyone in today's world is just trying to jump to, the highest tech solution. But in some cases, low tech and old school work better, right? It's that simple, just networking with the neighbors, right? It circles back to what you said earlier, a common theme throughout this whole conversation of that human touch, right? And I mean, that's great. Like, not many people are out there putting classified ads in newspapers these days, at least for that. So again, less competition, right? But you're still getting those off-market deals that no other buyers have access to. So
that's right.
I love that. That's sometimes simple is better. And in fact, usually I would say simple is better. So Dr. Jen, if people want to work with you as, as an aspiring landlord or someone who wants to scale their rental investing business, how can they connect with you?
For sure. So our website is mylifeasalandlord.com, which is the name of the podcast. And there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of me off the website. We also have a Facebook group, but I do it privately. Your Facebook group by far is the most amazing and dynamic community. I love being a part of your community. And so that's another way that people can engage with me is I comment all the time on posts, but there's so many posts in your Facebook group. But if people want to get a hold of me, they can go to mylifeasalandlord.com or listen to the podcast. Yeah.
Awesome. And, you guys don't realize this, but Dr. Jen here has won several awards for her podcast. It's an outstanding podcast. So go listen to it. And guys, if you enjoy these conversations that we have, please rate, review the show. It means the world to us. And we will catch you same place, same time next week. Dr. Jen, thanks again for coming with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is great.
All right. Bye now.
Like the idea of diversifying into real estate, but don't want the headaches of being a landlord? Enter passive real estate syndications. You buy fractional ownership in apartment complexes and other large-scale properties. Earn your share of rental income and your share of the profits when the property sells. In fact, most of the syndicators we've invested with have average returns over 20% per year. You even get full tax benefits, including accelerated depreciation. Even as you collect distributions in real life, you often report a loss on your tax return. So why doesn't everyone invest in real estate syndications? First, you typically need to know the syndicator to invest, and the minimum investment for each property is high, usually $50,000 to $100,000. That's a lot of money for a single investment, which is precisely why we formed an investment club to pool funds and invest together. Every month, we propose a new deal in the co-investing club and vet it together on a group call with the syndicator. Each deal is purely optional. Pass or invest as you like. As for us, we invest our personal money alongside you in every single deal. If you want to invest like the 1% without actually being a 1%er, join Spark Rentals Co-Investing Club. Email us at support@sparkrental.com with questions, and we look forward to investing alongside you.